In a division sparse as women's bantamweight, Aspen Ladd was a much-needed reprieve. The 24-year-old was unbeaten in 8 fights and being touted as a future title threat, only for injuries and poor discipline to quickly erase her goodwill. How did one of the sport's biggest prospects become one of its biggest jokes? And in more than one sense. Welcome to the INC, and today we ask, what happened to Aspen Ladd? It seemed destined Aspen Ladd would pursue a career in combat sports. The eldest of 6 children, Ladd had been raised around competition. Her mother had worked as a fitness model in her youth, while younger brother Shaylor began his own MMA career in 2021. At the age of 14, Ladd began training martial arts with the MMA Gold Camp in El Dorado, before competing in amateur events in California, where she built an 8-1 record. Ladd made her pro debut in 2015 against Ana Vidal at Invicta 11, avoiding all her opponent's submission attempts before finishing the no-gi champion with strikes in the first round. Over the next 2 years, Ladd began winning admirers among the Invicta faithful, competing at both flyweight and bantamweight, where she earned praise for her back control and ground and pound, accompanied by the banshee scream she becomes synonymous with during her career. By 2017, Ladd had built a 5-0 record, with 4 of her wins coming in the distance. And with the UFC looking to rebuild women's bantamweight post-Rousey, the company were ready to take a shot on the 22-year-old. Ladd had been set to make her company debut against Jessica Eye at the Ultimate Fighter finale, only for the match to be cancelled after Ladd fell sick the day of the fight. While little was made of it at the time, it marked the start of an unhealthy trend that plagued Ladd's UFC tenure. The youngster instead made her bow against Lena Landsberg at Fight Night Gdansk. After struggling early with her opponent's striking, Ladd took control once the fight hit the mat, freeing herself from Landsberg's half guard before finishing her Swedish opponent with her trademark ground and pound. Ladd followed the triumph with wins over Tanya Evinger and a fight of the night performance with Sijara Eubanks. And with women's bantamweight short of top talent, she was quickly fast-tracked to the division's top 5. The in-cage success, however, shielded trouble behind the scenes. During this time, Ladd developed a reputation for her struggles making weight, appearing noticeably frail during her cuts, even if she managed to make the scale at all. In April of 2018, Ladd had been set to face Leslie Smith at Fight Night Atlantic City, only to weigh in 2 pounds above the 136-pound limit. The bout was later cancelled after Smith turned down the offer of a catchweight fight, a decision which caused her to be released by the promotion later that year. Despite the concerns, the desperation for fresh talent at 135 saw the UFC turn a blind eye to Ladd's failings. And just 2 months after her fight with Eubanks, the company made their first attempt to bring the Californian to the mainstream. In July 2019, Ladd was given a main event against former champion Germaine de Randamie in what was billed as a #1 contender fight. Fans and media were high on Ladd going into the bout, with some bookmakers placing her as high as a -140 favorite. Those punters were made to doubt their decision when she stepped on the scale for the fight.
Okay. Come over here, follow me. Step forward a little bit.
The shot of trembling Ladd raised concern among the MMA media, with the first questions raised over whether the former flyweight could safely make 135. After rehydrating and convincing the commission of her health, Ladd's match with de Randamie was allowed to go ahead, where the youngster hoped hometown advantage would carry her to a career-defining win. The stoppage marked the first loss of Ladd's career, and at just 16 seconds broke the record for the fastest knockout in women's bantamweight history. Despite initially accepting the loss, Ladd's team came under fire when she attempted to overturn the fight on appeal, claiming referee Herb Dean had stopped the fight prematurely due to a subconscious gender bias. The California State Athletic Commission ruled against the appeal, and Ladd's loss was upheld in October. Worse was to come in the days after the fight, when it was revealed Ladd had gained 18% of her weight in the hours after the weigh-in, entering the cage at the same weight Chris Cyborg did for her featherweight bout with Julia Budd. The CSAC took immediate action, announcing they would no longer sanction Ladd to compete at 135 in the state. Ladd has not fought in California since. Aspen was able to keep her weight under control for her bounce-back fight, a main card spot against Yana Kunitskaya at Fight Night Washington. Ladd managed to claim the first round against the Russian with her wrestling, and despite getting the upper hand in the second, it proved too close for comfort for coach Jim West, who attempted to gi his pupil going into the final round.
You have to get on her ass and don't get off of it. You stay inside and you stay in that phone booth and you fucking punch the fuck out of her in her face. She's not gonna like it. Every time you hit her, she goes backwards.
Along with being her coach, West had been Ladd's boyfriend dating back to the start of her MMA career, and her partner's pep talk proved to have an immediate impact.
Jim West.
Oh! Whoa! I guess that comes from the corner work. That was a motivational speech we were laughing at, but look at this!
Yes.
Ladd managed to win the fight early in the third round, and having repaired the damage of the Durandamy fight, looked to make further strides going into 2020. After being briefly linked to a match with Juliana Pena, Ladd was booked against former title challenger Sarah McMahon in June, only for the fight to be cancelled the week before the event after Ladd tore her ACL and MCL in training. The injury forced Ladd to undergo surgery on her knee, putting her out of action for the rest of the year and the majority of 2021. Upon her return, Ladd was booked in a pair of matches against Ultimate Fighter winner Macy Chiasson, but bad luck and her notoriously poor discipline led to both fights being cancelled short notice. The first after Chiasson suffered an injury the day before the fight, and the second due to Ladd falling just a pound short of the bantamweight limit, with commission officials deeming her medically unfit to compete. With her absence nearly 2 years long, the UFC were desperate for Ladd to return to action. And when Holly Holm withdrew from her featherweight match with Norma Dumont, Ladd made her division debut just 2 weeks after her weight miss. What followed was one of the worst main events of the year, as an overly tepid Ladd circled the cage, landing just 16 strikes in the first 3 rounds. As with the Kunitskaya fight, West attempted to cajole more action out of his client. But rather than the motivation Ladd needed, West's words appeared much more venomous.
Please tell me what you're doing. You have to throw more than one punch. You got to get into the fucking fight. It's time to fight. It's the 4th round. You're down 3-0.
While Ladd had her best rounds after West's comments, it proved too little too late, as Dumont claimed the unanimous decision. Both Ladd and West came under fire for their behavior with the fight, with the two's relationship coming under particular scrutiny. Former champion Miesha Tate was the biggest critic, condemning Ladd for her poor discipline and describing the relationship between her and her coach as abusive. Despite Tate's attempt to book a match between the two, Ladd was paired with division veteran Raquel Pennington at UFC 273. Pennington used her superior boxing to piece Ladd up over the first 2 rounds, and while Ladd rallied with a late takedown, it was the Colorado native who claimed the decision. The fight all but ended Ladd as a realistic title contender, but little did fans know it would be her last fight in the promotion. In September 2022, Ladd was once again booked against Sarah McMahon, the woman Ladd had been set to face before her knee injury 2 years prior. Despite significant work on her conditioning, Ladd again entered the weigh-in depleted, and her subsequent weight miss of 2 pounds was treated with ridicule rather than disappointment.
She's a great kid. She's a really nice person, and it's never fun when you have somebody who's actually talented. She's a talented fighter, but part of the job is making weight. I mean, she's not made weight so many times. It had to happen.
The inevitable fight cancellation proved to be the final straw. Ladd was released from the promotion a few days later, having seen 7 of her previous fights canceled due to injury or failing to make weight. Ironically, McMahon too followed Ladd out the door, the fight serving as the final match on her UFC contract in a scenario similar to that of Smith 4 years earlier. It didn't take long for Ladd to find refuge, as just over a week after her release, the fighter was signed by the PFL to compete in their new featherweight division, with an upcoming bout against Julia Budd. Several factors played a role in Aspen's downfall. Bantamweight's drought of contenders led her to being pushed before she was ready, where more well-rounded and established competition exposed her very limited skill set. The biggest issues, however, were self-inflicted. Ladd's inability to make weight made her unreliable in the eyes of the fans, while her fraught relationship with West arguably hindered her development. Fans will be curious to see the next chapter of Aspen's career, but at least she's got that role in the Last of Us TV series to fall back on should things go pear-shaped. This is the INC. Please like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a video.